The Philadelphia Eagles are the only team in the NFL that Sean McDermott and Josh Allen have not defeated. I'll tell you how they can get that done on Sunday, today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Locked On Bills is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Well, folks, welcome in. It's time to get ready for the Bills' Week 17 opponent, the challenges they present, and what the Bills need to do to deal with them. So let's dive in. The Bills are back at home in Week 17 to host the Philadelphia Eagles. The game will be played on Sunday, December 28th at 4:25 p.m. Eastern Time at Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park, New York. Only one more regular season game left at Highmark Stadium after this one. You can watch this game on Fox. Kevin Burkhardt is on the play-by-play. Tom Brady, boo, is the game analyst. And then Aaron Andrews and Tom Rinaldi are your sideline reporters. This will be the 16th all-time meeting between the Bills and the Eagles, and the Bills have a 6-9 record in the first 15 matchups. The Bills have actually not had much recent success at all against Philadelphia. They've lost the last 3 and 5 of 6 since 2000. It's the only team in the NFL that Sean McDermott and Josh Allen have not defeated. They've had 2 chances to do it. In 2023, that 34-37 overtime loss in Philly, you probably remember this one. Gabe Davis, Josh Allen not on the same page for the game-winning touchdown. Jake Elliott hits a 60-yard field goal in the rain. McDermott doesn't try to get a drive before overtime, and the Bills lose. And then that 31-13 loss in 2019 in Buffalo, where I think Miles Sanders ran for 1,000,000 yards. So that's it. This is their next chance to get this one done. The Bills enter this game 11-4, second place in the AFC East, currently the number 6 seed in the AFC playoffs. Eagles are 10-5. They've clinched their division, the NFC East, and they currently sit as the number 3 seed in the NFC. Head coach of the Eagles is Nick Sirianni, a native of Jamestown, New York. I'm sure we have plenty of listeners in Jamestown. It's his 6th year as the Eagles head coach, has a 58-25 record. In his first 5 seasons, they played in 2 Super Bowls and, of course, won the last one. They're the reigning Super Bowl champions. Prior to coming to the Eagles, he was the Colts offensive coordinator 2018 through 2020. The quarterback of this team is Jalen Hurts, 27 years old. He's 6'1", 223 pounds, was a second-round pick in 2020 out of Oklahoma by the Eagles. He started 81 games. The Eagles have a 56-25 record in those 81 games. So far this year, he's completing 66% of his passes, 208 passing yards per game, 24 passing touchdowns, 6 interceptions, a passer rating of 100.2. Of course, there's a dual threat nature to Jalen Hurts, has 8 rushing touchdowns, 416 yards. Of course, there's a lot of tush pushes, but you know, he's certainly athletic. He's got some power to him as well as a runner. So you got to account for the dual threat nature of Jalen Hurts. Let's look at his metrics this year. So far, he's at 0.03 expected points added per dropback. That's 16th in the NFL. He throws deep 13.6% of passes. That's 9th highest. Pretty good on deep throws. 22 of 56, 830 yards, 9 touchdowns, 1 interception. 4th in the NFL in EPA per dropback on deep throws. Yards after catch, not a big part of the equation here. Only 41% of Hurts' passing yards come after the catch. That's 30th in the league. Throws to his first read 65% of the time. That's 19th. Average time to throw, 2.81 seconds. That's not a very quick trigger. Hits 30th in the NFL. His catchable ball rate is 75%. That's 17th, so middle of the pack in terms of accurate throw rate. Turnover-worthy throws, only 2.1% of the time. That's 8th best. Jalen Hurts generally does a good job of not throwing interceptions. He has faced a lot of pressure this year, 41% pressure rate. That's 8th highest in the NFL. Not a ton of play action, only 23% play action, and then only 7% screen. That's 25th in play action rate. That's 25th in screen rate. And so, Jalen Hurts is a quarterback that he's a little confusing, to be honest, because the highs are really good. There's times where you watch Jalen Hurts and you feel like you're watching a guy that can't be stopped and has really dynamic ability with his legs to create. He can push the ball down the field. He throws a pretty good deep ball. He's got a lot of leadership qualities. But then there's other times where you watch Jalen Hurts and you're just not even sure if he can function. And he struggles to know when he's hot and will make some bad mistakes. And you question if he sees the field well. So obviously a guy where the good certainly outweighs the issues. But if you go back to that game that the Bills played in 2023, I think you saw both sides of, man, it can look really rough for Jalen Hurts, and then it can look like he's unstoppable first half to second half, right? And so that's the streakiness of a guy like Jalen Hurts. And that makes him difficult to play against because you don't really know what you're going to get. And ultimately, he's very, very capable and has had some really big moments. Of course, was unbelievable in both of the Super Bowl games that they've played. And, of course, the last one that they won. So he's a tough challenge. All right, we'll talk more about this offense and a pretty interesting situation. It's probably the most defined offense in the NFL. We'll talk about that next and what the Bills need to do to stop it on the other side of it. So, folks, be sure to stick with me. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. There's bowl games, there's big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to be right is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. You just pick more or less on at least 2-player projections. You lock in your lineup and you're in the game. It's fast, it's simple, and it's available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. Prize Picks is going to add that extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. You can create a lineup in less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. You can choose from a huge range of unique stats like fantasy score, field goals attempted, free throws made, turnovers, whatever's going to fit your strategy, and deposits and withdrawals are quick and easy. It keeps everything flowing. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, welcome back, folks. Let's talk more about this offense that is coordinated by Kevin Patullo. He's 44 years old. It's his first season as the offensive coordinator. He replaced Kellen Moore, who left to be the head coach of the Saints. And so I think it's 5 straight years in a row where Philly's had a new offensive play caller for Jalen Hurts. And Patullo's been around. He was their passing game coordinator for the 4 years prior to being their offensive coordinator, and certainly had some time with Nick Sirianni back in Indianapolis. But, if you talk to Eagles fans, and I've got a couple of friends that are big Eagles fans, Kevin Patullo is not a real popular guy amongst the Eagles fans. And so a lot of questions about him and his capacity to do this job. So far this year, they're scoring 23 points per game. That's 16th in the NFL. They are a run-aggressive team. They run it 48% of the time. That's 4th highest. They pass it 52% of the time. That's 29th. 12th in EPA per play on offense. 12th in EPA per pass. 20th in EPA per rush. They convert third downs 38% of the time. That's 24th. They're outstanding in the red zone, 72% in the red zone. That's number 1 in the NFL. Now let's talk about their personnel. And this is not everybody eats. It's the opposite of everybody eats. It's 4 guys, right? That's who they get the ball to. So at wide receiver, the main guys, A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith. And they are a really good pair of receivers that complement each other very well. Now, both have a level of verticality to their game, but A.J. Brown is your, big-bodied, physical player that has elite play strength, good hands, can run people over. He's a powerful dude. Like, think Eric Moulds type player. And then in DeVonta Smith, you have your route winner. He's a lean frame. He's very, very thin. But he's a route runner with good hands, super competitive. Think more Peerless Price. That's what this duo reminds me of. Eric Moulds and Peerless Price, but like the 2020s version of that. Very complementary players, but both have a level of verticality. And, one wins with technique and route running and quickness and elusiveness. The other one's a bully. And they both get it done. In fact, both are within 70 yards of having 1,000 receiving yards this year. Now, their third receiver, their distant third receiver is Jahan Dotson, former first-round pick of Washington. He'll make an occasional play. That's what I'll say about him. He doesn't get much opportunity, only 27 targets this year, but he will make a very occasional play. But he's a very distant third to Brown and Smith. At tight end, it's Dallas Goedert. I think he's a really good NFL tight end. Hands are outstanding, good size, can win after the catch, ball skills down the field. He's been banged up a little bit throughout his career, but I think when he's available, he's a really good NFL starting tight end that can be productive, and you can funnel a lot to him. And then a running back, it's Saquon Barkley. And, of course, had the unbelievable year last year. Not having nearly as good of a year, but certainly a very potent playmaker. That is a huge part of this offense. They're still feeding the ball to him quite a bit. And his size, his power, his elusiveness, it's a lot to deal with. He's physically dynamic. He's as physically dynamic of a running back as you're going to find. And then his backup is Tank Bigsby, who is a battering ram between the tackles, although he doesn't get a ton of run. So when it comes to the distribution of the carries in this offense, Saquon Barkley, 261, Jalen Hurts, 102, and then Tank Bigsby's 40. So it's a Barkley rushing offense, and then, of course, that you'll get some Hurts scrambles, you get some Hurts tush pushes. When it comes to target distribution, A.J. Brown, 114, DeVonta Smith, 104, Dallas Goedert, 76, Saquon Barkley, 50, Jahan Dotson, 27. They don't have another player with more than 9 targets. It's Brown, Smith, Goddard, and Barkley. That's where the ball goes. It is not everybody eats. It's those 4 guys. And, very, very occasionally somebody else. Offensive line is a pretty good unit. Their left tackle is Jordan Mailata, one of the best 5 left tackles in the league for sure. Big, athletic, powerful. Their left guard is Landon Dickerson. He's a mauler, big-time physical player. Road grades. He's an outstanding starter. Their center is an outstanding starter, and Cam Jurgens has a lot of range and athleticism. He's not the biggest guy, but he can really provide them with movement skills and excellent pass protection ability. Their right guard, I guess, would be the weak link of this group. Tyler Steen is having a decent year. That's the spot that was vacated by the departure of Mekhi Becton. And he stepped into it. He's been in the pipeline for a little bit. They have a really good offensive line coach and Jeff Southland. And, any offensive lineman he seems to get his hands on, they turn into something really good. So this is their weak link, but I still think he's a functional starter. And then a very big deal for them this week is they get back Lane Johnson at right tackle, one of the best 2 or 3 right tackles in the NFL. Unbelievable athlete, and the splits with him on the field compared to when he's off the field, they're night and day. I mean, this is a different team with Lane Johnson, and they're expected to get him back this week from injury. So a really good offensive line, especially when Lane Johnson is in at right tackle. So what are my keys for the Bills defense against this offense? Well, you got to find ways to generate pressure on the quarterback. Jalen Hurts is a guy that when pressured, he struggles and he becomes much more pedestrian. He's 18th in EPA under pressure. He's 19th when blitzed. And so this is a team and a quarterback that you can, prioritize blitzing. It's not like, hey, you blitz this quarterback, they're going to kill you. In fact, Jalen Hurts is a quarterback that when forced to speed up his process in ways that he doesn't want to, there can be challenges finding his hot reads and getting the ball out of his hands. So you just got to manufacture that pressure. It has to be a high priority. And I don't really have a ton of confidence in the Bills pass rushers just going into this game and winning one-on-one battles. I don't think they have the horses for that. So you're going to have to manufacture it in some ways. Probably with some blitzes, probably with some load fronts, some sim pressures, some stunts. You're going to have to do some things up front. Number two is you have to get population to Saquon Barkley. Let me give you some interesting metrics on Saquon Barkley that will tell the story of kind of the variance that he's had as a runner this year. And if you've watched Saquon Barkley throughout his career, really dating back to Penn State, you can appreciate that he's really, really physically dynamic, but there is a feast or famine nature to how he runs a football. He wants those big explosive runs, and sometimes it comes at the expense of efficiency. Let me give you some numbers here. So Saquon Barkley, 25% of his runs this year go for less than a yard. Among 48 NFL running backs that have at least 100 carries this year, that's the second highest rate of runs that go for less than a yard, okay? Of those 48 running backs with at least 100 carries, he's 8th highest in stuff rate. He's 39th in yards after contact per attempt. He's 41st in success rate. He's not a very efficient running back. But when he gets going, he is a problem because he is so physically dynamic and just a true playmaker in space. So here's the other side of that. 31% of his rushing yards this year have come on explosive runs. That's the 11th highest rate in the NFL. Bottom line, can't let him get going. You have to find ways to get his feet to stop behind the line of scrimmage, and you have to get population to the football because when he gets going, he's a problem. Where the advantage you're going to have is not letting him get going. And that's a challenge because this is not a Bills run defense that inspires a lot of confidence. They don't build a wall, right? They don't do that. They have struggles not only maintaining run fits, but deconstructing blocks and getting off of blocks to make a play. You're going to have to do that against Saquon or else he's going to rush for 250 yards. Population to the ball, you got to find ways to get him to stop his feet behind the line of scrimmage. If he gets going, you're in trouble. And then number 3 is matchups. And I think the Bills have a lot of answers for Philly in the passing game through matchups. I'm not going to promise you that the Bills are going to shut them down, but I think they have reasonable answers. Look at a guy like A.J. Brown. Christian Benford's the type of corner you're going to want against A.J. Brown. Think about Nico Collins and DK Metcalf. Some of the receivers, Jamar Chase, that Benford's had success against. This is kind of a guy cut from the same mold. Play that matchup. With DeVonta Smith, you have Maxwell Harrison / Trey White, who's going to be the better matchup against Smith. In fact, I would say this isn't a bad idea to feature Maxwell Harrison a little bit more. And then as far as Dallas Goedert goes, I don't know that it's a one-player thing, right? It's Cole Bishop, it's Matt Milano, it's probably some Taron Johnson. But the Bills overall this year have been exceptional at defending tight ends. In fact, the Bills have given up the fewest catches to tight ends this year of any defense, the second fewest yards to tight ends. And so you kind of have some stuff going here. Hopefully you can get some pressure on the quarterback, and hopefully you can contain Saquon Barkley enough for these matchups to give you a chance to contain them to the best of your ability. So it's a really, really intriguing battle to me for Buffalo defensively against Philly's offense. I wish I felt better about the pass rush, but I think the Bills have some answers here. They just can't let Saquon kill him, and I have my concerns about that. All right, speaking of concerns, this Philly defense is really freaking good, so we'll tell you all about that and my ideas for how the Bills can move the ball and score points here on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with me. Welcome back, folks. Let's talk about this Philly defense that is coordinated by Vic Fangio. 67 years old. It's his second season in Philadelphia. It's his 25th season as either a defensive coordinator or a head coach. Of course, the last two in Philly, had a stint in Miami, was Denver's head coach, a long run with the Bears, a long run with the 49ers, a long run with Houston, was in Indy and Carolina. He's had a top 10 scoring defense 10 of his last 14 seasons. He's a good defensive coordinator. So far this year, they're allowing 19 points per game. That's third best in the league. They're fifth in EPA per play defensively, second in EPA per pass, 14th in EPA per rush. They're 40% on third down. That's 18th. They're 50% in the red zone. That is fourth. They don't really blitz much. 20% blitz rate. That's 31st, very close to being last. And their pass rush is pretty good. Over the last 4 games, in fact, it's actually really good. They're number 1 in sack rate. They're number 6 in pressure rate. And from a coverage perspective, Vic Fangio is zone match coverage with a little bit of man. So they'll play some cover 1, but the Bills are going to get a lot of cover 3, cover 4, cover 6. So 3 high across the back, 4, right, quarters, 4 deep leverage defenders, and then cover 6 where you play quarter, half. So cover 4 to one side, cover 2 to the other. The Bills are going to get zone coverage. They're going to put a roof on the defense and play top down with match principles. So different type of defense, like really different type of defense than what the Bills saw against Cleveland and New England in their previous 2 games. Let's talk personnel here. They're down linemen. They get Jalen Carter back this week. So they've navigated the last few weeks without Lane Johnson and Jalen Carter. They're expected to get them both back for the Bills game. And Jalen Carter, certainly one of the bright young defensive tackles in the NFL. Maybe there's some things about him that, make him a little bit challenging, but personality-wise or whatever. But he's a good ball player, right? He's physically dynamic. He can really create a lot of problems for an interior offensive line. He has game wrecker potential. His running mate is Jordan Davis, who's big, huge guy, right? Crazy athleticism. You're not going to really feel his impact as much in terms of like splash plays. He's not going to get a lot of sacks or tackles for loss, but in terms of that true space-eating presence, a guy that has a lot of range, right? So for like big nose tackles that can move laterally, he presents a lot. He's a load to deal with. And then Moro Ajomo is like their new Milton Williams player. He's kind of been waiting in the wings. He flashed quite a bit last year, and he stepped into this role, and he gives them, one of those Milton Williams type players, really. I mean, maybe a little bit bigger, maybe a little less explosive, but similar type guys. They got a good front with their defensive tackles. Then on the edge, they've had a couple of additions here that have really changed this group. They traded for Jalen Phillips, who we know all about from his time with the Dolphins. And I thought Jalen Phillips is a guy that's given Spencer Brown a good amount of challenge throughout his career. And, watching all of the Spencer Brown that I have, Phillips is a guy that's, been a good battle for him. They have Nolan Smith, who is really, really explosive. Now, he's not the biggest edge player. He's probably around 240 pounds, but he's got 4.3 speed, and, he can really fly around and give them a speed element off the edge. They have Jalix Hunt, player they drafted. Was it last year or the year before? A mid-round pick. He's turned into very quickly a nice, rotational piece for them off the edge. It gives them a lot of athleticism. And, they're going to have some stand-up linebackers with their rush players off the edge. And he gives them a lot of versatility to play in space, to cover, to rush. And then Brandon Graham, who was on their team for 100 years, right? He retired and now has come back. He's been back in the mix for a few weeks now, and you kind of feel like he's starting to ramp up a little bit. So they were a bit deficient here But trading for Jalen Phillips and getting Brandon Graham out of retirement has really helped elevate that group. At linebacker, they got one of the best backers in the league in Zach Bond. He was a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year last year, and he's parlayed that into another great season. Just fits this defense really well. Smart player, good physicality downhill. Is he the most rangy player? No, but he's smart, instinctive, and physical, and that's going to lead to a lot of plays. And then his running mate, I think they want it to be Nakobe Dean, who's, more of a spark plug type backer. He's not, you're not going to look at his frame and think that he's, this yoked up dude, but watch him play. He's physical. He smashes downhill. Good tackler, really good blitzer. And he was injured last year, came back off injury. I don't know if he's going to be available for this game. If not, they'll go to Jahad Campbell, who was their first-round pick and started for most of the year prior to Nakobe Dean coming back from injury and had a really good start to his season. But with Nakobe Dean back, he's played a lot less. I assume he'll be back in the fray if Nakobe Dean can't go as the primary player next to Zach Bond. At corner, they got one of the best young corners in the league in Quinyon Mitchell. I don't know how they got him where they did. They got him like later in the first round. To me, I had him as a top 10 prospect in that class. He's very quickly become, one of the best young defensive players in the league. Shutdown type guy, doesn't allow much production. Yeah, he hasn't really had the big plays on the ball yet, but he puts the clamps down in coverage. There's no question about it. He tackles and he's versatile. He could play, zone and trigger. He can play man and press at the line of scrimmage. His running mate is a problem for them, or Adoree Jackson. They've been trying some different combinations to maybe get Cooper DeJean on the outside to play Adoree Jackson less. But as they've really kind of done some things, whether that's bring in Michael Carter, actually, they at some point, didn't they trade for Jair Alexander? They're trying to do some things here to pressure Jackson. I think he's responded well to it, had some of his better games of late. A guy that was a first-round pick of the Titans that's had good years, but hasn't really been able to stabilize over the last few. And so I think he's more functional than he is an answer. And that's the guy at corner that you're going to want to go after if you can. Their slot player, Cooper DeJean, I love him. He's a really good football player. If you go back to my draft analysis, the year that he came out, I was such a big fan. Whenever the Bills traded back to pick 33 and ultimately selected Keon Coleman, I know that so many people wanted Ladd McConkey, and I hear you. That'd have been a great pick. The guy I wanted was Cooper DeJean, who was the number 11 player on my board that year. So I had Quinyon Mitchell as my 10th player. I had Cooper DeJean as my 11th player. Philly gets them both in the late first round and early second round. And that's a big reason why their defense is what it is. DeJean's a baller. Plays in the slot, can play man-to-man. Ball skills are there. He's physical. He flies around. He tackles. Like, he's going to be one of the best defensive backs in the league for a long time. At safety, Marcus Epps and Reed Blankenship. Marcus Epps, former college teammate of Josh Allen. I think he's probably more of a third safety or depth player, but they've kind of been through some things here at this position. They had a young player in Andrew Makuba who got hurt and is no longer available. Sidney Brown hasn't quite become what they want. So Marcus Epps has stabilized some things. And his running mate is Reed Blankenship, who was he's either UDFA or a 7th-round pick several years ago. I think has become a good starter for them. I think he's one of the best, downhill safeties. Have him trigger from depth and tackle. He's really good. And so I think they have a functional pair of safeties, and Blankenship gives you that kind of that tone-setting presence, a hitter at the safety position that's also had some big interceptions through the years. So, a really talented defense, right? You got some A-list talent in Carter. I guess you could say Jalen Phillips is really dynamic. Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis, Zach Bond, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. They got guys all over the place that are quality, cornerstone type starters. So what are my keys for Buffalo's offense against this defense? Well, you got to protect Josh Allen. I know that Josh Allen is telling you that his foot is gravy, that he feels good, and that he plans to play and all that. I'm nervous about it. I think that, if this was a different situation, like if his start streak wasn't intact, or, the possibility to extend his streak of 40 touchdowns and, to beat the Eagles for the first time. If those things weren't true, I mean, they probably should sit him. I don't feel good about this foot situation. And you got to protect Josh. I mean, this is the number 1 sack rate team over the last 4 games, number 6 in pressure rate. They got speed, they got size. And it's not just take away Myles Garrett, right? They got a lot of different players. Fangio doesn't blitz much, but when he does, it's really good. And you better take care of Josh because I'm nervous about that foot. I'm nervous about him playing, and you got to take care of him. The playoffs, the playoffs, the only reason we think the Bills have a chance at the playoffs is because of 17. So protect them, please. Number 2 is you got to attack the edges in the run game. The Phillies' run defense has been just kind of mediocre this year, and I think that's got to be a big part of Buffalo's plan, especially with a limited Josh Allen, who I don't think will present much of a running threat in this game. It's going to be pocket passer Josh. So you better be able to run the football, and I think you're going to have to attack the edges in the run game. They're really stout in the middle. Carter, they've got Davis, Bond, Campbell. Those guys are really good downhill players. I want to get them running sideline to sideline. I want to stress their range a little bit. They're lighter on the edge. Hunt, Smith, those are probably both sub 250-pound edge players. I think you want to send bodies at them and get that second level going lateral the best you can to give yourself your best opportunity to really be successful running the football. Then number 3 is play action. This has to be a play action heavy game for the Bills. It has been lately. Josh Allen's now in the top 5 of play action rate. I think Joe Brady's had some games where he's over 40% play action lately. That needs to continue in this game. The Eagles have a great defense. It's hard to poke holes in it. But if you look at their play action splits, they give up the 4th most yards per play against play action passes at 8.3. They have the 7th worst EPA per defensive EPA per play against play action passes. So I think you have to leverage that and get your play action game going. Special teams real quick. Jake Elliott's their kicker. He's been their kicker since 2017. Super streaky. An 85% kicker for his career, but he's not having a good season. 71% this year. He was 81% last year. He's had 5 misses in his last 5 games. And, right now he's on a bad streak. Their punter is Braden Mann, was the Jets punter for 3 years. He spent the last 4 in Philly. Definitely an above average NFL punter. Then the return situation, Will Shipley will handle the kick returns. Shout out Will Shipley, the pride of Weddington High School, where I also went to school. So it's cool to see that. But good kick returner, 27 yards per return, was a 4th-round pick a few years ago out of Clemson. Runs, I think his pro day, he ran 4.39. He's probably a low 4.4 guy. And he's a running back. So a fast running back and kick return, I think that's kind of what you're looking for. And then the punt returner is Britton Covey. He's handled that job off and on for them since 2022. 11 yards per return for his career, but he does have some muffs to his credit. So there you have it. That's the Eagles. A good challenge for the Bills. I wish I felt better about Josh Allen's health because I feel pretty good about the Bills' chances in this one. But, a limited Josh Allen against a good defense and an offense in Philly that, can, I think, stress the Bills in some ways, particularly with Saquon Barkley. So I'm curious to see how this one plays out. It's a good test for this Bills team late in the season. All right, there you have it, folks. We'll have crossover Thursday for you. It'll drop on Christmas Day. And then, we'll have our Friday episode, which will be my final thoughts. We'll talk to Dr. Kyle Trimble of Banged Up Bills, and we'll give you my predictions later in the week. So plenty of coverage coming your way. Then, of course, it'll be game day. You'll get Bills Squad right after Bills Eagles and all the things that we do. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.